Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a bleak and barren Sunday here at Hyde Cottage. And that is, for those of you who are new to the channel, that is my term for Sundays, when I get no mail. There's no mail delivery on Sundays. Steve gets no free books on Sunday. He has to make do with a handful of books he already has. And I admit, this Sunday has been less bleak and barren than usual, because it's a beautiful day. It's not cold. Let me stress that again. It's not cold. For the first time in 11 months, it's not cold. And also, Chris and Jadelle Rhodes came for a visit, and that was a lot of fun as well. So I could get through this Sunday just smiling, but it feels right to do a tag. Even so, because I usually console myself with a tag when I'm just sitting around staring at the mail slot and nothing's coming through. And I have a good tag that I just found. It's the Finished the Book tag, which I found on Jay Shay's channel. From his channel, I learned the tag was created by Headless Books. So in addition to a 12-year-old and a guy on a boat, and a bunch of librarians, and a merman, we also now have a headless booktuber. He created it, and what part of the fun was that I got to discover both these channels. Wonderful channels. I'll leave their links down below. You should subscribe to both of them. And it's kind of the morning after. It's kind of a tag for the morning after. Not what are you looking forward to, not what do you do, not your reading experience, but what about after that? What about when you're finished? And I like the question, so I thought we'd go through. Number one is, do you keep a list of the books you've read? And I have a spreadsheet that was made for me by Sam at Sam's Nonsense. She made me a very simple spreadsheet, something that even I can understand and use. And it pretty much works as a list of books I've read, because I read everything I get. Sooner or later, I read everything I get. And now, especially now that my reading tastes have moved almost entirely to new releases. So I don't keep any kind of list of the non-new release books that I read in a given year. I do still read plenty, but I don't keep any kind of list of them other than my memory. The very popular answer to this question, I suspect, from almost every booktuber will be Goodreads. Keeping a list of the books you've read, I think for many of you, is one of the main reasons you use Goodreads. But I don't. I just haven't gotten into the swing of flooding Goodreads with my book activity. So I don't do anything for the books that aren't new releases. But for new releases, the inventory that I keep of the books that I get effectively is that. Question number two is, if you record stats, what stats do you record? And I don't record any stats, but I do keep a count in my journal of how many books I've read in any given month. And then at the end, I do the count for the year. So just that, general stuff like that. I don't keep any other kinds of stats. I don't... Well, if you've been watching this channel, you know already that what I think about letting your stats drive your reading. That is a classic example of putting the cart before the horse. So I just assume, and I'm right to assume, that if I read incredibly widely in the new releases of any year, I will, my stats in terms of gender, race, nationality, ethnicity will be pretty good. They will. I assume that if I read very widely in any year's new releases, that will take care of itself. So I have not yet felt compelled to go hunting after a Samoan author, nor do I think I ever will. I will read what comes to me. And I think that's the kind of stat that's meant here, and I don't keep any such things. Just the number of books that I've read. And, you know, hand in hand with that, the constantly reaffirmed mental decision to keep a wide open mind. It doesn't do any good to be Colonel Blimp and say, well, you know, I'll just read what comes to me and I'm sure it will take care of itself. If you're a narrow reader, I am not a narrow reader. I read everything. Try to read anything that looks even remotely interesting. So I'm hoping that that's all I need to do. Question number 3 is, do you give a star rating to books? No, I don't. This is obviously directed at Goodreads users, and I think star ratings are anathema. A star rating is something that you can get at a glance. Why should anybody think that a considered reaction to a book is something you can take in at a glance? It isn't. As Jay Shay says in his video, we talk about books. Books are conversations. They are nuanced. They are detailed. Star ratings are for mufflers and carburetors. They're not for books. No, I don't use star ratings at all. No. Question number 4: do you review books? Well, yes, I do. I review quite a number of books for quite a number of venues. I don't. Again, I think this is probably has one eye cocked at Goodreads, and I really should be better at posting on Goodreads when I have reviewed a book somewhere else. I will never review a book just for Goodreads. Why on earth would I do that? When I can have an audience of my own, why would I do that? Why would any of you do that? If you review books for Goodreads and you put a lot of time and effort into writing them out ahead of time, making sure they're balanced, making sure they capture what you really want to say, email me. Why not run them at a literary journal instead of on a site where the site owns them? Well, anyway, I don't review anything for Goodreads, but I really ought to get into the habit of noting a couple of lines about the book and a link to the review of wherever my review was. I really ought to get into the habit of doing that, just because I know a lot of you are on Goodreads and I want you to read everything I write. But in addition to that, I review in a great number of places, and I want to increase that number. So, question number 5: where do you put your finished books? I would like to say, in fact, I think it's accurate, that I put 90% of my finished books on the chute out the door. to one various place or another. I'd like to think that 90% of my books I get rid of. I get a huge number of books in the mail every week. If I was stingy about them, I'd be up to my ham hocks in them in no time at all. So most of them, there's always a pile in the kitchen of books that are going out. And that pile fluctuates. Sometimes it's enormous, other times it's just starting. But the small fraction of books that I keep, I find room for. It's not easy. But even if I keep a tiny fraction of what I get. Even stuff I really like, I don't keep. I keep a tiny fraction of what I take in. And even then, the number is always increasing. So something in the cycle of life is not working the way it should. But I keep them just wherever they'll go. The very creme de la creme, the very best things of all, the finds of all finds, the things that speak right to my soul, come into this room. This is Valhalla for books. All books want to be here, but almost no books get here. Maybe 2 or 3 in half a year. But other than that, there are bookcases all over this place. I find room for them without managing to trip over them. I'm very happy, very proud to say, there are no books on the floor anywhere in Hyde Cottage. There are books on the floor in this room because this is my little, as Deb calls it, my man cave. But elsewhere, in the places where people go, the books are orderly. You walk in, you see a lot of books, but you don't see a hoard. You don't see a dragon's treasure pile, and I like that. Question number 6: how do you pick your next book? I organize my books by month of release and keep them that way on shelves. So there's that. But it's a 2-pronged approach here. I read my advance copies. I fly through them for the general impression of reading, for the feel of what's going on, I look for that electric spark in nonfiction and fiction. And I let it settle. And then weeks or months later, I will get the finished copy, and then I will sit down and read it again. And I will read it, the finished copy I will read with more critical attention. Because I kind of think you have to do both. But one way or another, the new stuff, the stuff that I read just fly through for the first time, that is catch as catch can, just give me it all. Give me it as fast as I can get it. It's the rereads that happen in an order, that those are picked in an order. So if I get, in a week, if I get 20 finished copies, and I know that I want to reread all of them, I don't just do those willy-nilly. I look at what their release dates are, and I read them according to their release dates. So if I've got, 3 finished copies for July 10th, 10 for the 17th, and 4 for the 21st, I will read the earlier releases first, whether their subject interests me more or less than the ones later on. I do that in order of release date, just so that I have that constantly going. I do not pick by mood. I'm omnivorously hungry for books. So the first read through that I do with the advanced copies, unless as you've seen, sometimes I miss, sometimes I just forget to read an advanced copy, but usually I'm gobbling them up. I'm well into the fall now of gobbling them up. And with those, I just grab the next one. I don't go by mood. I don't think, oh, now I'm in the mood for a murder mystery. I don't do that. Every once in a while, a mood like that will strike me, but it's rare. Question number 7. Do you have any rituals when you have finished a book? I kind of do. I suppose we all do. In a way, I can't wait to hear yours. I read mostly new releases, and when I'm finished with a book, that means I have read its finished copy, whether I read the advanced copy or not. When I've read the finished copy, I'm done with the book. And then I have a whole bunch of other things that I have to do. They're not rituals. They're considerations. I have to figure out, what was this book? How important was this book? Is this book review-worthy? Will I be reviewing this book? I have to answer all those questions for every new book. But if I've read something and I really, really liked it, I use the, I don't think I have an example here. I use the, do I? No. I use the sell sheet that's in the book. You've seen them. You've seen them a million times, these things. It's a publicity sheet, a pub sheet that the author sends, that the publisher sends with the book. I fold that so that the date is easily visible when I look at it. And I also use it, when it's folded, it's the perfect shape for a bookmark. I use it as a bookmark. And the ritual that I have when I finish a finished copy of a book is that I get rid of that. I don't need it anymore, so I throw it away. And then I have just a book without a pub sheet in it. But other than that, no. And question number 8 is, who do you tag? And I have a bunch of people listed here. Anthony Andrews, one of our youngest booktubers. I'd love to hear your answers to these. Roz, of course, at Journey Through Books. She has a few tags to do. Leah at Hyde and Seek. Jennifer at Insert Literary Pun here. I'd love to hear your answers to these things. I don't think I know half the answers that you would give. Olive at ABookOlive. You must have. I mean, look at how quantifiable this is. That's a perfect thing for a civilian Vulcan to do. And Old Blues Chapter and Verse. Strikes me that you would have interesting answers to all of these. So there you go. That is the Finish the Book tag to enliven my bleak and barren Sunday, which didn't need that much help. It was, as Sundays go, pretty good, and it still has hours and hours left in it. But for now, I'm going to wrap up with the tag, and thank you very much. I'll leave notations for all of this down below, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.